opportunity today for some democracy in action, as I was telling some of the early risers in here. But we need to talk about a couple of things. Good morning. A couple of things we need to talk about. Guys, I just finished grading the economic systems exercise. And by and large, the submissions were quite good. However, a couple of you scored very low. I did not fail you, but a couple of people did the P word. They plagiarized. Guys, if you use verbiage from another site, if you put verbiage into your document and you do not cite it, if it's word for word or nearly word for word, that is considered plagiarism. How do you get around plagiarism, guys? What's the way you can not plagiarize and you can use verbiage from somebody else? Yes?
Paraphrase.
Paraphrase, that's the best way. Is there another way you can do it as well? Yes? You got it. So here's what I'm saying to you guys. If you got less than a B- on this assignment, I am giving you, this is your gift, I'm giving you till Monday to resubmit. If you got a 0 on this assignment because you didn't submit it, I'm giving you till Monday to resubmit with a 1-letter grade penalty. If you already submitted, you are welcome to resubmit. You can get up to a 1-letter grade increase in your grade. If you got a C or below on this paper, I'm encouraging you to do so. If you got a B or above, what you got is what you got. I don't want anybody starting off the mid-semester with a C in this class. So if you got a C or below, you have till Monday to resubmit. If you resubmit and I find plagiarism, however, your grade is going to stand how it is. Do you guys understand what I'm asking for? Okay. If you miss the submission deadlines, guys, this is a soft penalty that you're only getting a 1-letter grade penalty. Please, if you got a 0, submit this by Monday so I can do that. I need the time to correct them because I have to have mid-semester grades in. Same with the online discussion. Several people just didn't do it. Guys, if you did not do that, don't make me give you a 0 on that. I'll give you full credit for doing a discussion posting. We have up next our top 10 list assignment, which I'm going to go through with you today. It's due on the 7th. This is the easiest assignment you will do all semester if you do it correctly. I'm going to show you how to do it correctly. After we get done with Chapter 3, and depending on the speed in which we work today, we may complete Chapter 3 today. If we complete Chapter 3, we're going to do the review on Friday. So that brings us to our first point, guys. I am asking you to tell me. We have two options here. We can do the test on Monday, or we can do it on Wednesday next week. Your test is going to be 50 questions, multiple choice, true and false, plus bonus questions. I'll also be putting the bonus points you've earned so far this semester into the equation. I'm asking you to go to polev.com/KentTonkin063 and tell me which date you prefer. It has to be one of these 2 dates because we have to do midterms by next Friday. And it makes no difference to me because the test is just as easy for me either way. So I encourage you to vote. We'll give it a minute to get it. In the event of a tie, we will do a coin toss. Again, if you're just getting in, we're taking a vote on when we want to have the test. We're going to give it one more minute for you to get a chance to vote because we have a tight race here. While we're waiting for everybody to get their votes in, by show of hands, how many of you have Lockdown Browser on your computers? So is that one? If it's not 100%, make sure you download it, install it. You'll need it for the exam. Okay, we're going to do our last 30 seconds here, guys. And it looks like at this point, our test is going to be next Wednesday. We will review Friday. After we review on Friday, I will be sending you a review sheet for you to study. This test is all multiple choice and true and false. I do not intentionally try to trick you. I will tell you to study. If we mention it in class, it is fair game, even if it's not on the review sheet. Guys, I have a standing rule in this class. I don't know if any of you guys have heard this rule before. I want you to try the extra credit. If you don't know the answer to an extra credit question, what should you try to do? Well, guess is one part of it. Here's the other part of it. If you don't know the answer to the extra credit question, if you can make me laugh, I might give you a bonus. Keep it clean. But if you can make me laugh, I have given bonus points for you. If you don't know the answer to the question, Tell me something that's going to make me laugh. If I laugh out loud when I'm reading it, and it's appropriate, you'll get a bonus. That being said, if you know the actual answer, put that down first. That's my standing rule in any of my classes. Any questions, guys? All right, guys, to reiterate, if you are resubmitting your economic systems exercise, when is your final date to resubmit? You got it. If you are having questions about what is and what is not plagiarism, come see me. Guys, here's the easiest way I pick up plagiarism. Here's the easy ways I pick it up. I've had people whose actual font and font color changes in the middle of their document. I've had somebody who was writing in bullet points all of a sudden start sounding like Shakespeare, and I picked that right up. Other things too. If you use verbiage that we've never discussed in this class and doesn't even fit within this class, I picked that right up. Guys, the copy and paste stuff, please, if you're going to do that, cite it. Tell me where you got it from. Before we get into today, guys, I want to cover the top 10 exercise. I'm going to show you how this is done. You're welcome to follow along with me on your laptop. Guys, what Forbes does every year, they publish something called the Global 2000 list. And what they do, they basically go through every company in the world and say who are the top earners by revenue and who are the top earners by profit. What's the difference between the two? Who can tell me? Yes, Jackson.
Profit is the money you have after expenses.
Correct. And revenue is the total money you make. So we're going to go to the Global 2000 list. I'm going to show you how to do this. If we go to the Forbes Global 2000, if you Google it, it shows right up. So here we are, the Global 2000, the list of the world's largest companies. And it'll take us to a list which we can actually manipulate the data. So here we have the total list. We can filter it. We can do all these things. But what we're actually going to do is to go in and see the actual top 10. So let's see the full list. And right now, it'll break it down. Now, you notice here that they have a default setting. Now, when Forbes does their default setting, they evaluate who should be in the top 10 by a number of criteria. They have their own criteria. So what shows up by default may not be correct. And what I'm saying by that is what I'm asking for. They ask here, they have several categories. They have sales, they have profits, they have assets, and they have market value. The ones you should be concerned about are sales and profits. If we click on sales, it'll immediately default us to the folks who had the least number of sales, but still made the Global 2000. If we click on it again, it'll take us to who had the greatest amount of sales. And here we can see, here's a spoiler alert, Walmart was number 1. But you have to click on it several times to put the list in the right order. If we click on profits, for example, again, it defaults to negative profits. If you click on profits again, it takes you to the top. Here's your other spoiler. Apple was the most profitable company in 2018. Do you guys understand why you need to do multiple clicks on this? You need to, if the numbers are going down and not up, you probably need to click on it again. So what I'm asking you to do is to provide me a list. The top 10 by total revenue, sales, the top 10 by profit, and tell me what companies are on both lists. Got me so far. Any questions on this part of the assignment? Okay, here's the second part of it. If we wanted to find out what our unemployment rate was in our town, how could we find out? Does anybody know who maintains all those statistics in the United States government? If you don't know, that's okay. It's okay not to know. Who is it?
Bureau of Labor Statistics.
It is, the BLS. Very good. And that's part of the Department of Labor. Gold star, man. That's a very good point. You can also find it simply by hitting Google. And we're going to do one, for example. We're in Loretto, Pennsylvania. And let's see if we can find the unemployment rate for Loretto. It may not show up for Loretto. It may come up for Cambria County. So, for example, when we get some of these other data sets, for example, people who publish this stuff, I would rather, if you had the option of getting something from a website like City Data, or if you went to BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, even though this is Johnstown, it's close enough for purposes of our discussion. So, for example, you can get all of the data you would possibly want in here. I'm asking you to go through the data and tell me what the unemployment rate is. So we can go down here, for example, let's see. If we have labor force data, right now this is our the civilian labor force, how many people are in it. our unemployment rate in March of 2019 in Johnstown, PA was actually really good, 2.8. And the most recent statistics for Johnstown, PA are unemployment total and adjusted. What you're actually interested in is the unemployment rate. And the unemployment rate for July 2019, the most recent statistics for Johnstown, are 5.8. So the way you satisfy that part of the assignment is by telling me what the unemployment rate is and by providing a hyperlink and showing me where you got it. It's that simple. You guys got me? What questions do you have? If you're not from the United States and you cannot find a reliable rate for your home country, use Cambria County because that's currently where you are. Is that fair, guys? And if you have a reliable measure within your home country, you can certainly provide me with that. For example, if your home country maintains reliable statistics, feel free to use those. But if not, feel free to use Cambria County. Any questions on the assignment, guys? Okay, going once. Going twice. So, guys, we're going to be moving at a good clip today. I'm feeling some good energy today, and I hope you are too. If you have questions, though, hit me up. We left off talking about socio-cultural forces. Guys, who here can tell me something that affects commerce based on a cultural level? We were talking about, for example, food is different in different parts of the world. Dress is different in different parts of the world. Can somebody tell me a cultural consideration that changes the way business is done in a specific part of the world? What might be something cultural that affects the way we do business? Ma'am.
Religions and not making any profits on Sundays.
Absolutely correct. Can you give me an example of the religion angle, by the way?
So for example, in Israel or Palestine, the Jewish Sabbath is on Saturday, so they won't be open on like Saturdays or like Friday evening to Saturday evening.
So we're talking different holy days. Fantastic. Who over here can tell me a religious or cultural consideration that affects the way we do business somewhere in the world? Who here can tell me? Yes.
India is largely vegetarian or vegan, so you're not going to be pushing market nearly as much.
Exactly right. If you go to McDonald's, they make chickpea burgers at McDonald's. By the way, we're going to be having veggie burgers at McDonald's in the United States. Do you know who's making those? It's not the Impossible Burger, it's the other brand. Who is it? Beyond Meat. Yeah, so it's going to be amazing. Guys, we also have things like, for example, different parts of the world have different alphabets. If you are creating cars, for example, if we're making cars in the United States and we're shipping them to England, what do we have to consider? Mr. Hood, what do we have to consider if we're selling cars in England? What side of the cars is the steering wheel on? You got it. And by the way, guys, so if we're making cars for foreign markets, we need to make sure we adapt to their laws as well. The ways we communicate with people also change. For example, if you go to Japan, and I love this policy, when you check into a meeting, you leave your cell phone in a plastic box outside the door so nobody can be distracted. What a wonderful idea. And that means you have to interact with the people around you. That's a cultural consideration for doing business in another part of the world. So the formality in which we communicate too changes. Guys, these are some things that have failed in other markets because companies didn't know where they were operating. I love this. Siri. The name Siri in Japan is a slang word for butt. So that's not something, nobody wants to talk to butt. And for example, when Schweppes tried to get into Italy, it was also mistaken as toilet water. We made all kinds of mistakes. And some cultures, for example. Now in the United States, if I come over here and I stare at you guys and I'm doing this, what psychological stance am I taking? What message am I sending? Like a mad or off-putting. Well, it's also considered to be rude in Turkey to the point where it is actual social rudeness. You might get smacked for it. And again, other places you go, for example, our colleagues in Brazil sometimes operate on a more lackadaisical structure than we do here in the United States. Here's some for you guys. Even the best and brightest occasionally screw up. George H. Bush, the original President Bush, was in Australia. Now, we do this in the United States. What do we mean by that? Peace, brother. Well, if you go to Australia, can anybody guess what that sign means in Australia? I'm going to give you a hint. Take away one of the fingers. So unintentionally, yes, the original President Bush successfully flipped off all of Australia. Didn't mean to do that. It was not intentional, but it happened. And the best and brightest make mistakes all the time. Michelle Obama, the former First Lady, when she visited the Queen, touch the Queen on the arm. The one thing you don't do in England is touch the Queen. She's supposed to be a revered monarch. You don't just touch her. And David Cameron, the former Prime Minister of Great Britain, wore poppies to an event in China, a poppy pin, to a part of China that had fought a revolution to get the opium dealers out. So sometimes, even the best of us make mistakes. Well, when we're getting beyond the cultural level, we start getting into the exchange rate. Who here can tell me what the exchange rate is? We say we have an exchange rate between our currencies. What am I talking about? Yes.
How much our money is worth in relation to their money.
Exactly. Let's say right now we've got a strong dollar. We have a strong dollar, and we do have a strong dollar in the United States. Mackenzie, is that good or bad if we're traveling abroad? It is good, because we can buy more, right? Our dollar's worth more. Can anybody tell me why a strong dollar might be bad for our economy? Because it is good when we travel. Why might a strong, Gabby, why might a strong dollar be bad? Exactly right. If people want to come to the United States, you know, if you guys had to pick the big tourist destinations in the United States to some people from other countries, my internationals, feel free to tell me if I'm right or wrong here, or to participate in this question. Guys, what are the big tourist attractions we have here in the United States that make people from all over the world want to come and visit us?
Disney World and Disneyland.
Disney is huge. And for whatever reason, a lot of people from Europe really love Disneyland. Well, when we have a strong dollar, all of a sudden, stuff's more expensive here, and people from Europe are less likely to come. So even though a strong dollar is typically good for us, sometimes it can keep people from coming here. The other thing, too, guys, when we have a low dollar, when the dollar is not worth much, we sometimes get more foreign direct investment. Meaning, if we can get more for our money, it might make sense if I'm Toyota Motor Company, instead of paying all the shipping, why don't I just build a factory here and make it happen here? So those are things that can all play in. Now, guys, our exchange rates vary constantly. Right now, we do have a strong dollar. In fact, right now, the industry is slowing down. Manufacturing is slowing down. And President Trump is blaming it on a strong dollar. I don't know if I agree or disagree. I need to examine the issue. But the bottom line is the currency rates change all the time. For example, we've had a lot of investment in places in Asia because of low currency rates. Guys, one of the things that happens too, countries occasionally get accused of devaluing their own currency. Why would we do that? It ties into something we just talked about. Damon, why would we devalue our own currency? Yeah, why would we do that? That's okay. It's okay not to know. Who does know? Yes?
To attract more people.
You got it, man. If I'm McDonald's and I'm selling hamburgers for 95 cents as opposed to $1.25, more people are buying hamburgers even if I'm not making as much money. I devalue my currency to get people to invest. When a country does this intentionally, it's sometimes considered to be, well, it's always considered to be a dishonest business practice. Well, and then we also get into stuff that's called counter trading. And that means, for example, we may even barter between countries. For example, I'm the United States. What do I have a surplus of right now? I've got an agricultural surplus of several products. Can anybody guess what they are? I'll give you a hint. One of them smells wonderful when it's cooking on a grill in the morning. Yes, Michael Scott's favorite food. Who here has seen the episode of The Office where Michael Scott burned his foot on a grill? Best episode ever. I mean, it's like, although I got to tell you, there's some wisdom to that. If I could have a grill by my bed where I could have fresh meat cooking to wake me up, who wouldn't want that? I mean, that's a great idea. But the bottom line is we got a surplus of bacon right now. I know it's hard to believe. Like in all of my life, when I was growing up, I said, I hope I live in a world where there's enough bacon for everybody, where I can have as much bacon as I want to eat every single day. That, to me, is the American dream. And it's come to pass. Why do we have a surplus of bacon right now? Anybody know? Yes. Anybody know? Yes.
It's like the health craze.
You would think the health craze isn't affecting that, and it isn't affecting donuts, as crazy as that is. It's not the health craze. Yes.
Is it because of people moving here from other countries and they don't want to eat bacon?
It's another guess. It's another good guess, and I feel sorry for anybody that eats bacon because it's wonderful. But yes.
Is it the export market's weak right now?
Correct. Right now, our biggest source of bacon exports was China, because we got a trade war going on right now. We're exporting less bacon and less soybeans. So we got a surplus of this stuff. What we may actually do, say for example, we got our friends in Canada and they're dying for bacon and soybeans, and Canada's got wheat that we need, we might actually, through the government, trade and barter for goods. So that's what counter trading is all about. So, guys, in terms of companies, too, a lot of companies that we think of as American companies incorporate outside the United States. Why do they do this? Why would you go to the Cayman Islands?
Did you can move your money differently to avoid taxes?
That's exactly correct. If you don't stay in one place too long, what's the old expression, a rolling stone gathers no moss. And if you can keep your company moving all the time, it's like you're staying 2 steps away from the tax man. There's a big company, in fact, the most profitable company in the world, who has been doing this constantly. Who am I thinking about? Amazon. Amazon played a lot of games with taxes. Not so much internationally, yes.
Apple.
You got it. It's Apple. Apple, anytime they would try to incorporate somewhere and they would try to tax them, they would say they were really incorporated somewhere else. They were doing the shell game constantly, and they were masters at it. Amazon tried to avoid taking a local sales tax, but they weren't playing quite the games Apple was. But if you look at all of these companies, they're based out of places outside the United States. Carnival Cruise Line. Yeah, we have a U.S. headquarters in Miami, but they're in Panama. Any place that has tax shelters. And Ireland is a huge place to get out of paying taxes. Wonderful place to incorporate. So, and again, we talked about this already, but we have a lot of folks who are making travel plans internationally based on having a strong or weak currency. So if we have a strong dollar, people from other places whose currency isn't as strong as ours are less likely to come here. So, guys, we're moving very, very fast this morning. I need a sip of delicious coffee, so I would like a question or a comment from somewhere in the room today. Anyway, sir.
You told the band that Heath Ledger was the best Joker. How do you rate Mark Hamill then?
That's a really fair question. I think Mark Hamill's Joker is the penultimate comic book Joker. Like if you go to all the interpretations of that character, he's all the best parts distilled into one. That being said, Heath Ledger's Joker to me still gives me the creeps more. Like, have you ever seen the movie The Dark Knight? Like when he walks in for that first scene, do you not have a reaction to him? It's like he looks like he smells bad. He looks like, and that constant, my father was a drunkard and a thief. It's like, it's amazing how scary it is, Bane's scary, too. I one of these days, I want to teach an entire class in a Bane voice, if I ever have the guts to do that. Oh, yes, I was wondering what would break first. So, what other questions you have? We got a great question from this side of the room. I need a question from this side of the room. Help me out. Yes, sir.
How do you feel about the 2021 Batman coming out?
Oh, with Robert Patterson? I'm giving him a chance. I know they're calling him Glitter Batman and everything else, but I'm giving the man a chance. What do you guys think? By show of hands here, who do you think? How many of you think the Twilight guys got a shot at being a good Batman? One hand. Who here thinks he's going to be terrible? Who here has not made up their mind? And this is fair too. Who here does not care at all? That's okay. That's okay, guys. If you don't like Batman, everybody has a personality flaw. You guys will be okay. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. But good question. I think he's gonna surprise everybody, and I think he's gonna knock it out of the park. That's my 2 cents. He's a good actor. Guys, here's one of the things we also get into. Our laws here are different than other people's laws. It's very hard to back up international copyright when you try to protect intellectual property in somebody else's country. Guys, it's very common if you walk into a foreign market to see American products that very closely resemble American products but are knockoffs. Here's another one that was really amazing. When Star Wars came out in 1977, many other countries, and particularly India for some reason, did bootlegs of Star Wars where they would actually go into movie theaters and record parts of the Star Wars special effects and recut them into their own movies that were bad knockoffs of Star Wars. The bottom line is if you don't have any way of backing that up, if you have no way of enforcing your intellectual capital outside of your country, it can be very tough. Now, we've got this wonderful Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, which is supposed to support copyrights in multiple countries. But it's very difficult to enforce copyright if you don't have a presence on the ground in that given region. I really think, too, guys, we're going to be facing a crisis for manufacturing and physical goods that nobody sees coming. Guys, who here can tell me in the 1990s what killed the music business in the United States?
Being able to stream and download.
You got it. The MP3. You can trace the demise of the music industry to 3 letters. MP3. All of a sudden, it was super easy to share music. Now, what was the music business's response to the MP3? Does anybody know? What was the music business's response? Did they try to adapt, or did they try to slow down progress? If you don't know, I'm going to tell you what they did. They started tracking down internet service providers and finding out who was downloading their music illegally. And they literally were sending cease and desist lawyers to 10-year-olds. Kids were at home were getting letters basically saying, hey, we're Polygram Records and you owe us $10,000 in fines. This seriously happened. All right, what do you think the public response was to this? It looks very similar to what George Bush did to Australia, except one of the fingers was missing. Basically, what they said, we're going to dig our heels in and we're not going to change with the times. And as a result, guys, you can be on tour. I guarantee you, in the last year, how many of you have gone to see a concert by an independent or new artist or musician? Raise your hand if you have. I guarantee that some of the... Who'd you go see, if you don't mind me asking? Juice WRLD? What else did you guys go see? Who'd you go see? Okay. Anybody else? Yes. Okay. J. Cole. I guarantee that some of these guys are not making a living on their music. I guarantee that some of these folks, if they were not selling t-shirts and doing live performances, would not be making ends meet. You cannot make a living selling music anymore. The model has changed. But what happened was the music business, instead of adapting, said we're going to hold on to the old way of doing things. Here's where I'm going with this, guys. Who here has ever heard of a technology called 3D printers? Yeah, you can make physical items. Let's think about this for a second. If you buy a new pair of Nikes, what are those Nikes generally made out of? Not much leather anymore. What are they made out of mostly? Knit, rubber, plastics, derivatives. Guys, there's no reason to believe that within the next 20 years that we won't have our own 3D printers and we won't be able to produce our own products like that at home. So if you're Nike, all of a sudden you're thinking to yourself, how am I going to control this stuff? Because somebody, if they downloaded a pair of Jordans, for example, the design for them, there's no reason they couldn't print it themselves at home. So the intellectual property concerns that the music business was facing in the 1990s are going to affect anybody else making physical products in the next 20 years. Think about that for a second. And we're already seeing the death of brick and mortar retail. That's the way things have to change. And in terms of protecting intellectual property, bootlegging is going to be bigger than ever. See if I'm wrong. Come back in 20 years. When you guys are alums, when I'm still upstairs with my room full of Batman figures, except I'm a lot fatter and a lot older, probably have less hair, come up and tell me if I was wrong. Tell me if I was wrong. If I was right, buy me a coffee or a beer or something. Guys, some of the things we sell in other markets that we do not sell here, we don't sell asbestos in the United States. What is asbestos? Does anybody know? Have you ever heard of it? What's it do? Oh, yeah. This stuff, we used to put it in the ceilings of buildings because it was fireproof. For example, if you wanted fireproof paint, fireproof lining, asbestos simply won't burn. It's what brake pads are made out of. But here's the deal. When we put it into old buildings over years with moisture and heat, it started to flake off. And if you breathe this stuff in, it stays in your lungs and it never leaves. You get something called mesothelioma. Can't believe I pronounced that right. I've been practicing all morning. We also sell other things in other countries like pesticides. We sell cars that don't have airbags or seatbelts in other countries too, guys. The original Volkswagen Beetle. I'm not talking about the one that just went out of production. I'm talking about the original 1950s cars. Anybody ever ridden in one? The dash is made out of a very unique material, metal. What happens if you're in a front-end collision and the only thing between you and the other car is a piece of metal and a steering wheel? The end result's something out of a Saw movie. It's terrible. It's a bad thing because there's no safety apparatus. We produced and sold those in Mexico. Volkswagen did up into the 1980s, guys. And it's because other countries don't have the same safety standards. And believe you me, you can go into South America and Mexico, and they have different standards in terms of what medications are approved. I don't mean that as good or bad. It just is. We also have countries where corruption is more common. For example, in the United States, is it generally viewed as acceptable to bribe people? No, I would hope not, except I accept Wild Turkey and Jack Daniels as bribes for this class. Drop them off outside my office, put your name underneath the bottle. I'm kidding, I don't accept bribes. Well, not on recordings anyway. Guys, in terms of these bribes, though, they're very common in certain countries. How about India? If you go to India, they have one of the largest bureaucracies in the world, and if you're not greasing somebody's palm, you're probably not getting business done. That's not saying it's right. It's saying that the countries on this list are highly corrupt in terms of government and getting things done. One of the other common things, what's a common thread for most of the countries on this list right now? Bless you. Is there a common thread as to what's going on in these countries?
War or some kind of protesting or terminating.
War and civil unrest?
Totalitarian governments.
You got it. Most of these countries are not capitalist countries. They are not places that have open or free markets. And in some cases, like Syria, there's literally a civil war going on. So there's a lot of corruption. For example, Kim Jong-un does not look like he's starving. The rest of his country is. So, in terms of other things that we have to think about, we've got environmental and physical forces. Guys, we start talking about climate change. I will leave it up to your own beliefs and conscience, whether you believe that man-made climate change is real or if it's just happening. But here's the trick. When we have climate change, when we have rising sea levels, when we have environmental disasters, is there a part of the world that's disproportionately affected? What part of the world is disproportionately affected? Antarctica, for sure, because we're losing glaciers all the time. Let's see if I have a pen in here, and we can illustrate this. If not, I will have to illustrate it using only my hands. This is going to be like an art kind of thing. I'm going to try to make you visualize. This is the globe. So you can see it. It's 3 dimensions. I know it's amazing, like this 3D modeling technology, holograms. Right in the middle of the globe, what do we have? We got the equator. What is different about the equator than any other place in the world? Even though yesterday it was pretty darn warm. Is it hotter or colder? It's hot. So it's one of the hottest places in the world, so people live on coasts. Generally speaking, people live close to water when possible. When sea levels rise, it affects those folks first, because all of a sudden they're losing their livelihood. Fish are dying. They're not able to keep the same industries that they had alive. And so environmental issues affect the developing world more quickly than they affect us. Here's another thing too, guys. We have a luxury in the United States and in many parts of the developing world that keeps us nice and comfortable all year round that other people don't have. What do we have that some people don't have? You got it. So if the temperature goes up 10 degrees, we crank up the air. If you're living in Sudan, you don't have that option. And so a 10-degree rise in temperature can be catastrophic. We also have something going on these days called trade protectionism. What's the T word that's associated with trade protectionism, Felix? What's it called? If we have trade protectionism, what's the word that's associated with trade protectionism? Begins with a T. President Trump's all about it. Can anybody help Felix out? Tariffs, absolutely. So we've got 2 types of tariffs. We got tariffs that we're trying to do to protect our interests, and we got other tariffs just because we can. A protective tariff is, all right, your cars are coming into the country, and they cost $5,000 less than our American-made cars. So we're going to slap a $4,500 tariff on your cars so our cars look more appealing. Then you got revenue tariffs, which means basically we're just slapping these on your goods because we can. We want to make some money off you. It's the same idea behind taxation. If you guys want to know, how many of you, by show of hands, have traveled internationally? Always glad to see that. When we come back through customs, the reason they ask us to declare things is what? They have 2 reasons, really. Yes?
They'll put taxes on the foreign goods that you're bringing back.
You got it. The other reason is to make sure we're not bringing something that's hazardous or prohibited. For example, if you're trying to bring home Cuban cigars. So we also, as part of trade protectionism, we sometimes have quotas. Okay, Toyota, you can bring over 10,000 trucks this year. After that, no more. And then we can have an embargo. We have had an embargo with a country now for 60 years who is very close to us. Who am I talking about?
Mexico?
No, actually we're good with Mexico. We have a trade war with Mexico, but Cuba. Does anybody know what brought on that tariff or that embargo in the first place? Has anybody ever heard of the Cuban Missile Crisis? Guys, this is the truth, and I know this is a history, not a history class, but we're going to give you a little history to give you some context. In the early 1960s, the United States and the Soviet Union were in the midst of something we call the Cold War. And it meant We're building nuclear armaments. They're building nuclear armaments. Cuba was an ally of the Soviet Union. Cuba was in with Nikita Khrushchev, who was the premier of the Soviet Union at that point. And basically what happened was they started rolling atomic weapons into Cuba. Basically, Soviet-provided atomic weapons were going to be within about 45 miles of the U.S. border. This turned into a showdown between the United States and Cuba that almost resulted in World War III. Literally, we were within about 12 hours of having an atomic war. That's how bad it got before cooler heads prevailed, and somebody said basically it would be a really bad idea for us to bring about the end of the world. Thank God. But since the 1960s, actually since the early 1960s, we have not had open trade with Cuba because we've had an embargo. We have basically an embargo on several other countries right now. North Korea, for all intents and purposes, Iran, and a few other countries that we think are detrimental to U.S. interests. So when you basically say we're doing no business with you at all, that's what we end up with. I'm going to tell you a story about how tariffs can apply in very strange ways. Guys, in the 1970s, for example, the United States was producing a lot of chicken. We eat a lot of chicken in this country, and we were exporting it all across the world. Well, a number of countries started saying, well, we don't want your chicken. You're hurting our local businesses. We're not going to take your chicken anymore. The United States retaliated with tariffs. Guys, what do you notice? And this will all let up, I promise you. What do you notice that's unusual about this pickup truck? There are seats in the bed. There are indeed. You have very good observation. You may notice there are 2 seats in the bed of this pickup truck. They came with belts. They came with little hand grips. You could literally ride in the back of this truck. It's called a Subaru Brat. Has anybody ever actually seen one? They're very rare, aren't they? Most of them rusted to pieces. The steel was not good. You may say to yourself, what does this have to do with the chicken tax? Well, because the United States was socked with this chicken tax, we stuck a tax on every pickup truck that was coming into the United States and said, if you're going to tax our meat, we're going to tax your trucks coming from Europe and from Japan and everywhere else. Subaru had this great idea. They bolted 2 seats into the bed of the Subaru Brat pickup and said, it's not a pickup, it's a passenger. And that's how they got around the tariff. How crazy is that? Have you ever seen one of these things? I do not recommend riding in bed, and particularly because the vehicle itself is very bouncy, prone to rolling over, and if your head is sticking out over the top of a pickup that is rolling over, bad things will probably happen. But I would remember this. I would remember the Subaru Brat and the chicken tax. I would definitely, if you haven't already written that down, I would write it down and remember it. So that's your little story about the chicken tax. And we're moving fast. Gosh, we're moving fast today. I would like another question or comment about anything. Somebody, yes, sir.
What's your favorite beer?
Favorite beer? Ooh, that's kind of like saying which is your favorite kid. There's so many. I would have to say at this point in time, can I just go with a brewery? Is that okay? All right. New Trail Brewing out of Williamsport, Pennsylvania. They're making absolutely wonderful beer, and these guys are all outdoors people. So they literally don't keep their brewery open past like 5 o'clock because they want to go out mountain biking and hiking and all that stuff. And they make beer for people who like to run and stuff. So people who don't like to run and don't work out enough like me probably shouldn't drink it, but it's wonderful. So it's good stuff. I'd ask you what yours was, but I'd probably get in trouble. So that's a good question, though. Anybody else have a question before we continue? Sir?
You my phone.
I do see your phone. Now, what kind of phone do we got here?
It's my U.S. phone.
U.S. phone. You should put a case on this thing, man. It's going to take some hard knocks. So would you call it a burner?
Yeah.
It's a burner phone. It's like a Breaking Bad phone. Anybody here a fan of Breaking Bad, by the way? Who's excited for El Camino? Who here hasn't heard of El Camino? Like, it's a new Breaking Bad movie. We're going to find out what happened to Jesse Pinkman. Like, Breaking Bad might be the best show ever made. That is my absolute favorite TV show of all time. Like, you know what I'm talking about, burner phones? Just snap them and throw them in the garbage. And Gus Fring, oh man, I love Gus. He is like the best businessman ever. But guys, we're going to continue on our march down the discussion of international business. Guys, a lot of people are complaining and are concerned because so many of our jobs are leaving our country. Well, on one hand, the statement, why are they leaving? Let me ask you guys, why are we losing so many manufacturing jobs in the United States? What's the problem? Why aren't we keeping them here? What do you think, Shelby? Why are we losing so many U.S. manufacturing jobs? Absolutely. You can pay somebody a lower wage. You can pay a lack of benefits, all these things. It's very tough to make stuff in the United States and make a profit. There are some people who believe that President Trump's idea of tariffs are going to pay off for us in the long run. Other people do not believe that. Guys, what's your opinion? Do you think tariffs are a good or a bad thing? Are they a long-term fix or not? What is your opinion? We're slapping tariffs on imported goods to make manufacturing appeal more attractive in the United States. What do you think? Yes?
They're kind of like a double-edged sword because we put tariffs on them, but then they just put tariffs right back on us. So it works in some ways, but then in another aspect it hurts us.
Yeah, I think that I agree completely with your point. I think that sooner or later people are saying, well, not even later. If we're saying to China, we're putting tariffs on your goods, their immediate response is, well, we're going to do the same to you. Now, the ultimate goal of some of this stuff, there's two real goals. One is to get either tariffs knocked off that we want knocked off, or to spur American consumers, for example, to pay more for American-made products. Is that going to work? Do you think people would say, hey, we're going to pay 25% more for a phone because it was made in the United States? No, I don't think it is either. I think that the cat is out of the bag on globalism. This is as close as I will ever make to a political statement in this class. I don't think tariffs are a good long-term solution for just about anything. I think what is a good long-term solution is having more competitive industries, having more competitive businesses, saying, yes, we are good at certain things, let's compete on those. So I leave that to your own political beliefs, what you believe on those. But we do have some groups that are supposed to try to help us out. We've got something called the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, which came out in 1948. That was right after World War II. All of a sudden, we are the world. We're getting along again. And we realized we needed to have some sort of way to get reasonable tariffs, meaning that we're going to cooperate and support global business, particularly for the countries that we're trying to recover. Then we got something called the World Trade Organization, who helps people moderate disputes. Who here, by show of hands, has ever heard of the World Bank? If you haven't heard of it, you will hear of it, especially finance people. If you want to know how you do business in markets around the World Trade Organization is associated with the World Bank, and those two try to negotiate disputes and also facilitate lending. Well, then we get into something called a common market. Guys, a common market means we've all agreed to have the same currency, for example. We got the European Union as the best example. You can go anywhere in the EU and use a euro. It's wonderful. We got this common currency. It comes with some downsides too. There are countries who feel that they pay disproportionate amounts of fees to support it. There's one country in particular that's been in the news a lot the last couple of years because they want out of the EU. What country am I talking about? England. By the way, does anybody know what day England's supposed to leave the EU? Anybody have a guess? It's an upcoming holiday. Can you take a guess? It's not Christmas, but it's Halloween. I don't know, okay, I'm not like a real superstitious person, but I don't know if I'd schedule like a big thing involving my country on the Feast of Samhain. Like, that'd be like saying, hey, we're going to do this incredibly, ambitious computers changeover with all these banking records. Let's do it on Friday the 13th. What could possibly go wrong? Doesn't it seem like a bad idea? Yeah, it seems like all kinds of things could go wrong. And in terms of the members of the EU, I just point this out, that we're going to be seeing what we refer to as a hard Brexit. Guys, this is what we mean. Like right now, if we have all the countries that are in the EU, and they've got tariff-free zones, all of a sudden, what's Great Britain going to have to do once they separate from the EU? What are some things that they're going to have to renegotiate? Yes?
Trade deals.
Yeah. Every treaty that was part of the EU no longer applies. So we may end up with something called a hard Brexit. What that means, guys, is that we are cutting ties, we're separating from you, and we don't really have a plan as to how all that stuff's going to work. Now, people who are supporting this in Great Britain are saying we've been underrepresented, we're paying too much for nothing, we're not getting our money's worth out of this. And by the way, is there a part of Great Britain that's really opposed to this? What country within Great Britain? Yes? Well, Scotland, and more so Ireland. Because Ireland what do we see there? The biggest tax haven in the world, one of them, and they're saying you're taking us out of the EU. We're going to be less attractive to all these countries now too. Yes,
Ireland is not Great Britain.
but it's part of the British Empire.
North Ireland is.
Touche. You're correct. But Northern Ireland and Ireland's still part of it's under the same rule. They have the same. They're under the British monarchy.
I'm pretty sure they're not.
I'll check on that. I could be wrong, but when Northern Ireland and Ireland were unified after the Troubles, they were one country. So Northern Ireland, and there is no technically Northern Ireland anymore ever since the.
Well, there is.
I mean, there's culturally a Northern Ireland, but in terms of they're one country at this point.
No, I think there is a Northern Ireland and Ireland.
Well, Northern Ireland, though, I mean, was what happened in the 60s. Let's look it up. Let's resolve the argument. Here's the trick, guys. I have been wrong before, and I'll be wrong again. Okay, I stand corrected. So Northern Ireland is still upset because they still have business involved. I will admit when I'm wrong. So Northern Ireland is leaving with Great Britain, but people aren't happy about it. So, by the way, who here can tell me what the Troubles were all about? What happened in Ireland in the 70s?
Do you just mean like being under English rule?
Well, they referred to the Irish Civil War as the Troubles. What was going on?
I don't know any specifics. I just know about. Did you try to break away?
Well, it was basically the Catholics versus the Protestants, and people who viewed themselves as Catholic in that part of the country were seeing themselves as second-class citizens who did not want to be under British rule and under the rule of the Anglican Church as well. So, yeah. So, all right, we had a history lesson today. That's okay, guys. Just a couple other things too, in terms of the folks who are going to be benefiting from this departure of Great Britain and Northern Ireland from the EU. I'm not certain who is going to benefit, to be honest with you. Because if I were in England, for example, and I'm selling product, my biggest exporting area is going to be the rest of Europe. So all of a sudden, I'm going to have to renegotiate these deals. If I'm in Great Britain and I'm leaving the EU is also saying, wow, Great Britain is one of the 3 largest economies in the EU, 3 or 4, and all of a sudden those folks aren't going to be paying due and supporting the EU anymore. We've got a lot of countries within the EU who are facing significant debts. So this is going to be challenging for everyone. In terms of NAFTA and CAFTA, NAFTA was the agreement that we are currently renegotiating. Happened during the Clinton administration and turned the United States, Canada, and Mexico into a tariff-free zone. CAFTA is the same kind of concept, except it's in Central America as opposed to the Mexican North American area. The objectives of NAFTA were pretty simple. We wanted to have friction-free trade. We wanted to have more competition. We wanted to make sure that we could have cooperation. Our current president believes that we've been treated unfairly in the deal and that American jobs have been lost. I think you could argue that some American jobs have been lost, particularly in manufacturing. That being said, 2 of our 3 biggest trading partners are Canada and Mexico. So it's going to be interesting to see what the president negotiates here. By the way, and I'll leave you with this today, guys. In terms of our 2 partners, Mexico and Canada, does anybody know what the president's goals are in terms of working with them? What is the president asking for from Mexico? What has been his big request? Like fencing. Yes?
To pay for the border wall?
Yeah, he basically said we're going to have Mexico pay for the border wall and contribute more to their own immigration control. What's he been asking for from Canada? Does anybody know what he's been pushing for there? He wants more U.S. agricultural input into Canada so we can sell more dairy and more meat and those kinds of things in Canada. Guys, we're going to finish this chapter Friday. What day is our exam? You got it. All right, we'll review on Friday. Have a wonderful day, guys.